Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's wonderful to have you here at the celebration for the new Department of Psychology at AUC. My name is Muna Amir. I'm an associate professor of psychology, and I've been here 11 years, and this is probably one of the most exciting times that we've seen since I've been here. And I'm chair of the new Department of Psychology. Many thanks to our band here, Mad Bosa. I don't know if you know this, but two of them are professors at AUC. We have Arthur Boss from biology and Carrie Forden from psychology. So some of you are seeing a different side of Carrie than you've seen in her classes. And we also have Oliver Orion and David Perry in the band. So we want to get a sense of who's in the audience today. So raise your hand if you are an alumni. You graduate. Whoa, that's a lot of people who graduated from AUC. Okay. All right. Raise your hand if you're a current student. You're currently very nice. Okay. Are there any parents of psychology students in the audience? No matter what we do, there's just one over here. We were hoping this event would convince the parents that their money was not wasted, but apparently they're not convinced enough to attend. What about community organizations and NGOs? Many of our partners in the audience, thank you for joining. How about mental health practitioners, psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors? Okay. What about professors of psychology? Those of you who are teaching psychology, either here at AUC or anywhere else. Why don't you stand up? Stand up, everybody who's a professor of psychology. Okay. And I think we have some colleagues, professors and staff, and our friends from other departments. Is that right? Yes? Thank you. Okay, so the question we keep hearing is, why are you celebrating psychology? We've had psychology at AUC since the 1920s. So what's new? Well, what's new is that we're a department now, separate. For the past... For the past few decades, we've been, our home was in the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Psychology, and later Egyptology. And this was a wonderful home for us for many years. And our friendship with the SAPE department, which is now the C department, will still continue. At the same time, we're very excited about the opportunities for us to grow bigger and to contribute more. So today, we have a few speeches, we have a video, and then we have our panel, which I know many of you are interested in, related to stigma of psychology. Unfortunately, according to the program, Provost Ihab Abdurrahman was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, he was not able to attend, and he does send his greetings. And so I'll now welcome to the stage the president of the American University in Cairo, Mr. Francis Ricciardoni, to give a few remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mona, for your warm introduction, and welcome to everyone. Let me join her and all my colleagues from the new department in welcoming all our very distinguished guests, thanking all of you. I'd also like to thank two very important people who are unable to be with us this evening, and we had wished very much would be. That is Suad Jufali and her daughter Maha, who are pioneers, really, of mental health and social and spiritual well-being in this region, in Saudi Arabia where they live, but also right here on our campus with Suad Hanam's very many generous gifts and her TLC for all of us here. So Suad, if I can send this to you telepathically, and Maha, please know that you are in our hearts this evening, and we would not be here without your generous support at AUC always, and especially for this incredible new venture that we have. I would also like to make a confession. I'm coming out here tonight. This is good for the soul. This is what psychologists do, and this is partly to reassure the few parents who are here, or maybe not, maybe to frighten you. But my confession is this: I was a psych major. Yes, I found my way there, probably like many here at AUC. I tried first one thing and then another. I frightened my own parents. My father was a small businessman, and he wanted me to do something practical. I first frightened them by being attracted to theater as a major, and I gradually decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. I thought of English, started some of that. I took some courses in teaching and education because I knew sooner or later I had to get a job. I was attracted to foreign languages. I took French and Italian. I was one of those restless young liberal arts students who couldn't really decide. And I finally decided on a dual major in French, actually French theater, and psychology, which was it was trendy at the time. As always, it grips young people who want to understand who we are, what we're doing, where we're going. But I wanted to also reassure parents that you can be a psych major and not turn out to be even a diplomat as I was, or a university president as I am now. Those are jobs that might exist also in the future, I hope so. But we at AUC try to educate our students for jobs that might not even exist in this rapidly changing world. If there's one hardy perennial form of work, though, and employment, it is care for others. It is human well-being, human health, and the people who work to provide human health and well-being and support and happiness. And so psychology, the study of psychology, the study of the soul, of the spirit, clearly is one of the most seminal ones that ought to be part of everybody's formation, I think, at some level or another, whatever profession or ambitions we want to go out to do. So to the parents who are worried about your students becoming psych majors, relax. And I think be grateful that your students are so fascinated by the study of what it means to be a healthy, balanced, happy, well-functioning human being. I also want to thank in particular and point out here the presence of Dr. Nasser Loza, whose family were not only pioneers of this incredible service here in this region and in Egypt, but also who personally has done so much for the community here. I knew as an American diplomat of your services to the foreign community that was visiting, and of your services continuing through this day, and I'm proud to think of you as a personal friend and as a friend of AUC. Thank you for coming this evening. And I know that it's at some cost to your other commitments and that you're going to have to leave us early, so thank you so much for taking the time. I wanted to do one other thing. I hate to lose the opportunity of an audience not to do this little commercial based on this card, because it's about our identity. As people in the psych department, you are all interested in identity. This is our identity as the American University in Cairo. It's what makes us so special, and why people make great sacrifices in many cases to come here or to send their sons and daughters to study here. We're special in Egypt, we're special in the region. We are the American University in Cairo, the only one with this sort of style and method of teaching and learning. We are Egypt's global university. We aim not only to open the world to young Egyptians, but to open Egypt to people from all over the world. And as you see in our psych department, we've got very many Americans who are attracted to this wonderful country because AUC is here and provides an opportunity for the kind of teaching and research that they're able to do in the United States or in other countries outside. Then finally on the front of this card, and I think copies are available to everybody coming in, there's something else that's important to the reason we're here this evening to inaugurate the psych department. We state our mission as inspiring explorers. Inspiring, each of these words is deliberately chosen. Inspiring is the way we teach. We don't instill, we don't tell, we don't stuff heads with knowledge. We inspire, we try to elicit, stimulate, excite. Explorers, people who are searching, people who are moving about, looking for things. Explorers for lifelong journeys. People don't come to AUC to complete their education. They come to accelerate it, to learn even more how to learn and in exciting and dynamic ways. So inspiring explorers for lifelong journeys of challenge, as psychology certainly is, discovery, innovation, and service. And the study of psychology, the practice of psychiatry for those who go on and get a medical degree after this, is all about service of our fellow man and woman. So it's a special night to be celebrating the establishment of this department here. I don't know if I'm the only one who has all these notes, the facts and figures. Dr. Mona, I thought you might present some of this. I think most people in this room are aware that this is really the first time we've had a psychology department, a whole department, not just a part of a department dedicated to this study. We offer, I understand, more than 100 course sections annually, close to 140 majors now. That's a big deal at AUC to have a major and that number of majors, and minoring in this subject. And we have more than 1,000 living AUC alumni who have been psych graduates. So we're pretty proud of the impact we've had even before having a psych department, and we really look forward to growing and expanding the impact we'll have in this field of human endeavor going forward. I'm going to leave the rest of the presentation to those who know much more about it than I do. Let me just close by saying mabruk to all involved. Shukran again to Suad Jufali and Maha, and to all who have contributed and who are serving in the department. And bitawfiq, inshallah.
Thank you, Frank, for your words. Actually, you just presented a little bit about what we are now in terms of our numbers, but 60 years ago, in 1957, we graduated the first 2 psychology majors, and at that time, the psychology major was repackaged into a newer major. And then, despite the excitement, the interest in psychology sort of dwindled. During the 1960s, we didn't really have many people graduating. The psychology major fell off the books of the catalog until the early 1970s when Dr. Nicholas Siasio came. So. Many of you know Dr. Siasio, and we've had, along with him, many other faculty who have really contributed to developing the department. What we're going to show you now is a video that kind of traces a little bit about the history of the psychology department, and also tells us a little bit more about what's happening nowadays. The psychology major started in AUC in 1957, but over the years it sort of died and not many people were taking the major. And then Dr. Siasio came in 1971 and he revived the psychology experience at AUC.
When I was graduating, we were the second largest group of grads. They became identical, Dr. Siasio and psychology, that a lot of people, including myself, we thought that the major started with him.
Dr. Siasio really laid the groundwork for community-based learning at AUC. And back then it was mostly focused on community service or observation. Now things are a little different. Now most of our programs are focused on developing scientifically informed projects, working on more sustainable approaches that can help those communities continue. At the undergraduate level, all of our students are required to take a community-based learning course before they graduate.
I've done a study on 23 cohorts of my students, and the results were statistically significant, and the students have gained a lot from the experience of CBL, And at the same time, the self-perception has become more positive.
We did kind of integrate a community psychology approach to our program development and strategic planning for the department. We have student representatives on most committees.
I see things from a student's perspective, so I kind of give them insight into how the experience is from an outsider, not faculty, not department.
What is unique about studying psychology at AUC is several things. Number one, you have two options. You have the community psychology program and you also have the counseling psychology program.
I think what makes our counseling program special is that it's a sophisticated package that includes intensive didactic trainings, plus it has a lot of experiential training. AUC is the only program in the region that has an in-house clinician training center.
The psychological clinic is a gateway towards real life, providing us with safe environment, techniques and strategies with how to deal with the privacy and confidentiality of the clients.
And we go through each one of their cases with them, from the initial intake, through their treatment plan, through the way they conceptualize their cases.
To have a comprehensive 3-year program that covers pretty much everything you need to know to become an effective counselor is really special in this part of the world. And in a country where we just don't have the capacity for every person who has a problem to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist or any kind of practitioner, we need to find other solutions that are more community-based, that address many people at one time.
We teach first about general principles about prevention, so how do we try to create communities where there are fewer health problems, where there are fewer mental health problems, and also how to promote well-being in communities.
We're a practitioner training program, so our students have to be working with partners in order to gain their training and also to offer the services that they offer.
In order to graduate, you have to do an internship for 1 year. I did my internship at Hala. For the first semester, we worked on the Photo Voice project. In this research, it was a strength-based approach, so we focused on the positive aspects in the lives of persons with disabilities.
في ناس منهم كان التفكير بتاعهم كان سلبي إلى حد ما. الفوتو فويس خلاهم يفكروا بطريقة إيجابية.
I think at last count we have more than 40 memorandums of understanding with different organizations.
الجامعة الأمريكية في شراكة على مستوى كذا مشروع وكذا وظيفة، شراكة فيها استمرارية، يعني أقدر السنة الجاية أبقى عامل حسابي إن قسم علم النفس هيبعت لي مجموعة من المتطوعين فأقدر أشتغل معاهم في برنامج.
We do partnerships with NGOs like Cotanea, for example, and we've done a lot of work with them. They prepare our students for the service itself if it's related to the work of Cotanea, like working in orphanages.
التعاون مع الجامعة الأمريكية أفاد الطرفين. وطنية فتحت الباب إن طلبة الجامعة الأمريكية يجوا عندنا ياخدوا ورش توعية دوز اند دونز توعية لهم عن القضية. كان في تدريبات للعاملين في جمعية وطنية من أساتذة في الجامعة الأمريكية.
I've been collaborating with UNICEF, the Ministry of Social Solidarity, and the National Council on Childhood and Motherhood, do capacity building for social workers and also for staff working on the Child Helpline, both groups working in the field of child protection.
And our dream is at some point to have a community consultation center where we can offer all sorts of consultation from program development to evaluation so that we're continuing to empower communities and transform lives for years to come. The video was so great we wanted to show it to you twice, actually. So the video talked a little bit about the past and also a bit about what we're doing right now in our programs, the undergraduate and then the 2 graduate programs in counseling psychology and community psychology. And what we're doing, I think, I'm waiting. Some of you may have received this booklet. I know that we ran out. This booklet covers the history of our programs from the 1920s till now and kind of looks a bit at what's happening in the future as well. But I wanted to talk to you today for a couple of minutes about what's our vision for the future. And before that, I think it's important to recognize all the people that have really contributed to where we are right now. This did not happen overnight. A lot of people put in a lot of effort. We have faculty and students and staff and collaborators from the community and administrators. And a special note that we wanted, of acknowledgement that I wanted to make for the professor that's been here the longest actually from our full-time faculty, Associate Professor Henny Henry. He's been here 12 years, and a lot of his efforts are really tangible even till today, especially with the development of the master's program. And he was also the chair of the SAPE department before we divided into the 2 departments. So thank you, Henny. And I also wanted to thank from our community partners, Dr. Nasser Loza from the Bahman Hospital. Many people don't know this, but Dr. Nasser has been collaborating with us for decades now. We're talking about more than 30 years. And actually, he played a very big role in the establishment also of our master's program by sending letters of endorsement. And he probably doesn't even remember this. But he did play a big role and continues to now, as the Bahman Hospital is one of the main sites where our students get training and also where many of our graduates get employed. So what's our vision for the department in the coming years? Well, we have 3 main visions, so I'm just going to tell you briefly where we want to go, how we're going to build up on our strengths. The first has to do with community impact. As you've seen, community work is very integral to where we are in our department and has been since for decades. And what we really want to do now is develop more sustainable methods for developing projects that have higher impact. And you can see 2 examples here. Many of you have heard about Watanea. They've been mentioned many times. And right now, just recently, we had a meeting with Watanea representatives and most of the professors in the department to develop a 5-year memorandum of understanding that's going to match or pair a whole bunch of different courses and projects and faculty consultation so that we can have a more sustainable impact. And another project that I wanted to highlight, and we're very happy to announce is moving forward, is the next stage of the grant with UNICEF in partnership with the Ministry of Social Solidarity that's been working for the past couple of years and will continue to work to to develop the capacity building training of social workers across the nation. We're talking about Ministry of Social Solidarity social workers as well as the National Child Helpline. And this $1 million project is starting up and will continue for the next couple of years. So we're hoping that through that we can develop more sustainability in that project as well. And we're hoping, as I said in the video, that we at some point will develop a community consultation center. This is our dream, to have a centralized system where we can help consult for different organizations throughout the entire stage of planning for projects, ranging from developing initial needs assessments to designing programs, to implementing programs, evaluating programs, and staff capacity building. So we're hoping that that would be something we see in the future. Number 2. Of course, psychology has always been, psychology has a distinguished history in Egypt. Egypt actually has historically been the leader of psychology in the region across different universities. And we really want to develop our knowledge base here, in particular working towards establishing more research in basic psychology. And we're talking about here cognitive psychology, social psychology, developmental psychology. In the region, a lot of people, when they think of psychology, they think of counseling, or they think of clinical. They think of helping people with with problems. But that's not the core of psychology. The core of psychology is research, and on many other areas that don't even have relationship with counseling or clinical. So we really want to break that stereotype about psychology and develop more and more research in that area. At the same time, we can't, of course, forget that we do have a strength in relation to the mental health training that we offer in terms of our counseling program. And so, as you can see from the bottom picture here, we have an annual mental health leadership training. It's a 10-day workshop that was established initially in partnership with the World Health Organization Regional Office and the General Secretariat for Mental Health. And we've had participants from 11 countries, and so we're hoping to pursue that further. And also preparing a series of trainings on psychotherapy, starting with family therapy and also supervision training. So hoping that we can have, share some of the knowledge that we, give to our own students to the larger mental health practitioner community. And finally, our last main aim in our department is interdisciplinary collaborations, and that's why I think we have many people in the audience here from other departments. Psychology is a very unique field in terms of how it can intersect with other backgrounds. We, of course, have a long-standing relationship with sociology, anthropology, with the community development minor. We're working with the Graduate School of Education to hopefully, inshallah, start a graduate diploma on learning enrichment. So we'll be working with supporting children with special needs and inclusive education, and working with architecture, also related to special needs, but in terms of developing programs that focus on the design of space and offering courses in that area. With biology, we're starting in the fall to offer new courses related to neuroscience and hoping to build up our neuroscience background. With business, we're hoping to build up more of our portfolio of industrial organizational psychology activities. And then, of course, we have a long-standing history with refugee studies, and we'll be offering training workshop in coordination with the Central for Migration and Refugee Studies coming up very soon on psychosocial services for refugees. So this is just a taste of where we're heading. If you want to join in, please contact us. We look forward to collaborating with anybody here who wants to be part of this process. So now I would like to call to the stage the panel, Dr. Robert Switzer and our panelists, who are going to talk about stigma, which is an issue that I think many people in this audience have a specialization in, and many of us have been working on trying to eliminate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mona, and welcome everybody. First, let me just extend again on behalf of the Provost, Hala Abdul Haq, his regrets that he's unable to be here. I think that this was important to him, and it's important to all of us. This is a big deal. It's a big deal for the university, and it's a big deal for the school that I'm pleased to be the interim dean of right now, the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at AUC. We have had a psychology program, as you've heard, for over 60 years in various forms, but to have it take the form finally of a department on its own represents a huge step forward. I well remember the late Nick Ciascio. I've been here for many, many years teaching philosophy before I became a dean, and Nick was a very special person, as I'm sure many of you remember. And by the way, a quick plug, if some of you do remember Nick the way I do and want to celebrate his memory, I think there's actually a scholarship fund that has his name on it. So, if you're, just wanted to mention that. But Nick was for so many years a driving force in developing and shaping this program. But I really feel that what has happened, the way that this program has grown and developed, would have exceeded his dreams. I think he couldn't have anticipated the incredible growth and the stability now and the excitement. It is in place as a department, and it has a future that is moving towards very rapidly, and things are really happening. And I think I want to join President Frank in thanking some of the donors that have been a key part in that growth and that sustainability. I want to also echo Mona's comments in thanking people like, and in particular Hanny Henry, who's the longest serving member of the department and the previous chair of the mother department, SAPE, from which psychology, as it were, was born only a little more than 6 months ago. His efforts and influence and people like him, I mean, they are the things that we're celebrating here today. But I especially need to thank Mona Ammer, who you've just heard from. I think you probably, those of you who don't know Mona, you probably do now. You got a good sense of her incredible energy, her incredible dedication, and that's what it took to someone. Only Mona, in a sense, could have stepped into this position. It took someone with commitment, with tenacity, and with vision to get through the process, especially in the first few months, of getting this department up and running, and with so many different programs and ambitious initiatives of various kinds. So I want to thank Mona for everything that she's done. Of course, I've long known about Mona and her contributions, and also that of the person next to me, Hala Abdul Haq and Carrie Forden, among others in the department, through their involvement in academic community engagement and community-based learning, CBL. What is now the department, has been a leader at AUC, and I've, as Dean of Undergraduate Studies for the last 6 years, before coming to HUS, I was deeply involved in this process of going outside the classroom, of being committed and engaged in the community. And there are very few people at AUC that have done this more successfully than the psychology faculty. And it is a key part of the program that they have built. And that brings me, finally, forgive these opening comments, to our panel and its theme, which is stigma. And all of which connects with the department's long-standing and deeply felt commitment to its most basic mission, transforming communities and empowering lives. One more little tangent, if you'll forgive me. I mentioned I've been here a long time. I'm a philosophy professor. I wanted to add to Mona's list of collaborations that philosophy should be there too. In fact, philosophy probably deserves credit for being the mother of psychology as a science. But then we take credit for all of that. So, but my own field is what's known as phenomenology, which is really the study of the experience of consciousness, the way that we are in the world, and so on. And stigma is a particularly interesting topic for that, because, I mean, clearly to encounter someone who, for example, has a visible handicap, you know, your experience of that person is colored. They are by the thing that defines them initially. And to overcome that, to be able to not let your world shift because of the stigma that this person has, is a very deep challenge. And of course, also from the perspective of the individual who is marked in this way. It changes their perception, their being in the world, as it were. And this is all very interesting, but it lacks something that I think I admire my colleagues so much for, which is that it's very kind of theoretical, it's very nice, but it doesn't go out into the world and change things in the way that the colleagues that you're about to hear have done. And to address and alleviate pain and suffering the way that they have done. And this is really where, you know, the issue of stigma takes on a lot of significance. And I think this is where the department, despite the fact that it has so many different missions and so many different things that it focuses on, this is the great strength and the great contribution that goes all the way back to the commitment, again, of Nick Ciascio and the direction that he gave the program. So we are going to be focusing now on this issue of breaking down stigma barriers. We have many different people that could be here. Among the faculty, alumni, and students of what is now AUC's Department of Psychology, many people who have worked and continue to work to transform communities by, for example, breaking down barriers, and such as stigma barriers. In putting together this panel, we looked and considered many people. I think probably we could have had an entire day's worth of discussions, but we had to narrow it down, and we've come up with a list of 5 distinguished speakers, and I'd like to introduce them now, and then we will hear from them. So first of all, and I think I'm going starting at my left and proceeding, let me introduce Hala Abdul Haq. She's a graduate of the program in 1975 and again in 1981. She's affiliate instructor at AUC, a consultant on inclusive education in the psychology department. She's a passionate advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities. She's an educational psychologist with a specialization in disability and inclusive education, and she co-founded the Egyptian Foundation for Organizations and Experts Supporting Inclusive Education. This organization raises awareness, conducts advertising, research, and promotes networking about inclusive education. Next, I'd like to introduce Najib, who is also a graduate of the program in 1989 and then in 2014. She's the director, psychologist, and she aims to help young people explore their feelings, gain insight, and make changes in their lives. She's the founder and director of Inside Out Counseling Center. The center provides mental health services to burn victims, women, and others in need of their services. Next on our panel is Farah Shash, also a graduate in 2009 and master's in 2013. She has a dream of achieving gender equality and ensuring the well-being of women in Egypt. She's currently the chairperson of HarassMap, an award-winning volunteer-based organization working to end the epidemic of sexual harassment in Egypt. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Yasmin Al-Hagri, a graduate from 2004. She's the Deputy Executive Director of the Wataniya Society for the Development of Orphanages, which we've heard about earlier. She has a passion for serving children, which started when she was in college. As an AUC student, she was an active member of Volunteers in Action, one of our leading student organizations, and that focuses on supporting orphans. And last but certainly not least, I want to introduce to you Holid Salah Eldeen, who has his fan base very much in evidence. Thank you. He's a psychology student, and he's on the Student Affairs Committee representative as well as in the psychology department. He's former president of the Sociology, Anthropology, Psychology Association at AUC. He's a senior now at AUC, majoring in psychology and integrated marketing communications with minors in both anthropology and sociology. And that's the kind of thing that we're so proud of at AUC. So welcome, Hala. I think I've said enough, and I will now let others speak. Let me just say a few things about how we're going to do this. Each speaker will speak for approximately 5 minutes to briefly talk about how they've addressed and hopefully broken down some of the stigma barriers that we've talked about. As the speakers well know, they have just 5 minutes. And if any of you in the audience notice somebody holding up colored pieces of paper, don't worry, this is just to remind the speakers about their time limitations. So we are hoping that we will keep things well organized. After the 5 speakers, we will have a question and answer period, probably for about 20 minutes, maybe a bit more. I will be again moderator, and if you have questions, please try to formulate them now in your mind as we go through this, so that you can keep them brief. We may not have a colored card for you, but we will drag you away if you go on too long. And so try to keep things brief in your questions. The questions will be live. We have microphones to send out to you. And again, I would just, of course, ask for your attention as we go through our panelists. And I'd like to begin with Hala Abdul Haq, and she will be discussing how she's addressed stigma.
Okay. I have to start by saying we are a department with a long past and a short history. Breaking down stigma barriers, little did I know that it will become second nature, a life passion, a mission that started in 1971 when I joined AUC as a freshman. Being the longest working faculty member of psychology, it turns out that I can share firsthand experience of our department's history, at least since 1971. I arrived from a very conservative girls' high school to meet the vibrant, amazingly inspiring young professor Nicholas Siasio, who would have these strong, strange mood swings from laughing wholeheartedly and being too friendly to an aloof and detached person who wished to be left alone, weighed by sadness of seeing the Egyptian people with their mental health issues compounded with poverty. However, his stage was his class. He would be with it, creating change, reaching out, breaking barriers between his students and their community, instilling in them a deep sense of social responsibility and civic engagement. A teaching methodology that shall later be called community-based learning. As students, we became passionate about psychology, and I recall our sincere efforts as undergrads fiercely fighting for the right for a master's degree. Sadly, our dreams were crushed. Many had to go either to Egyptian universities, a very challenging experience with a technical language barrier and a different learning environment, or we had to spend our life savings to travel abroad. In my case, I had to do that. That was why when finally we had our moment, decades later, and I recall that with hand, the emotions I felt attending the Senate meeting where we earned our approval for our master's degree, it was genuinely a peak experience. Yes, I knew then that we can create more impact. Though my training as an educational psychologist abroad put me on a rights-based approach towards persons with disabilities, it was the topic that I was introduced to in Tahrir campus, actually, by Dr. Siasio. He was the pioneer in drawing the attention of AEC students to disability. He was the first to send Iftatan Farag, my colleague and friend, and I to work with children with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Ramses College in 1975. In my paper, I talked about emotional intelligence as I was able to reach out to the children and communicate. I saw the self-fulfilling prophecy of disgruntled, unhappy staff members. I knew then, within this very short period that I spent in the school, that there is something different, that there will be a change. And it was 16 years later that I learned what I experienced from one project was a science elsewhere. I became a specialist and an advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities to inclusion. No more segregation, another life-changing experience that started in our psychology unit. Quoting AUC today, in fall 2009, after the passing away of Dr. Siasio, it said, Siasio was instrumental in building the foundations of the undergrad major in psychology, the founder of AEC's Counseling Center. Having served AEC for more than 30 years, in 1974, he founded the Child Development Center in Cairo, in Zinhom, of which he remained director until his retirement in 2004. He strongly promoted community service amongst his students. True, he was the person who put my feet on the road to service, as I said earlier, a tradition that became entrenched in our major. When I was working in the Center for Children with Disabilities, later on, Dr. Siasio used to send his students in the 90s and early 2000s to serve and to learn. Because of all of that, I found my calling in teaching Psych 3, a course called 302, which is Personal Growth and Adjustment, since 2007, a CBL course. I knew that CBL was breaking down stigma barriers with reference to psychological disorders, disability, orphan childhood, homelessness, refugee status, among other things. In 2011, I started giving my students pre- and post-service surveys after a statistic analysis of the 23 cohorts we studied. There was change. There was change in the students, in how they perceive themselves, and in the community, of course. We were creating change, raising awareness, reaching out to more marginalized groups in our community. Yes, it was Dr. Siasio. Dr. Siasio introduced me to service, and it was AUC, through academic civic engagement, the late Dr. Panzali, and the inspiration Dr. Amani Shimi, the psychology department, and my supportive colleagues that helped me evolve in that field. Thank you, AEC, and its supportive faculty and staff. Thank you, my students, for rising up to the challenge of becoming civically engaged humans. And thank you, my very dear Professor Dr. Siasio, for being the way you were, committed to breaking barriers of stigma and for inspiring us to follow your lead. The question remains, was this talk about our department or about Dr. Siasio? I'm not really sure when one starts and the other ends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hala, for those moving reflections. I would like now to introduce Najib.
Good afternoon. Only the brave suffer from stigma. Those are the people who admit they need help. They face the risk of exclusion, discrimination, either within social circles or the workplace. When I picked this career, I made an oath to listen to all the broken voices. I started my private center knowing that I wanted to help anyone, for profit or non-profit. It all started with burnt patients after I had witnessed Dr. Amr Mabrouk, professor of plastic and maxillofacial surgery at Ain Shams University, who also happened to be my husband for 25 years, work and dedicate part of his profession for the burn survivors. He kept telling me, only the poor get burned. Nobody wants to come near them. They smell bad. They are the untouchables of our society, so it's our job to take care of them. A harsh sentence that scarred my heart, but inspired me to be part of it. Burn patients suffer from two types of stigma, a social one and a self-stigma that they internalize because of their abnormalities. They become depressed, severely anxious. This can significantly inflict feelings of shame, lead to poorer treatment outcomes. Fixing their outside was totally my husband's role, but for me, their inside is what mattered. I wanted to create a better world in which they can feel safe and accepted. I wanted to save the untouchables, and that's how it all started. Now, easier said than done. The biggest challenge was the stigma towards mental illness that has occupied most of their minds. When told they required counseling, I got outrageous remarks such as, "We are not crazy." And we had this beautiful 20-year-old girl who attempted suicide. When we made arrangement needed for psychological and psychiatric help, her father totally refused to admit her or bring her back, saying, and I quote, and of course translate, "It's enough that my daughter is burned. I don't want people to say she's crazy. I'd better see her dead." But I still know deep inside that I could do it. I had to camouflage counseling with a party taking chance of a Christmas and a Prophet's Day happening in the same week. I invited them over, a form of icebreaker, so they were able to associate the place with a happier one. That day I ate with them, looked at their burned faces, touched their burned skin, and hugged them. Yes, I hugged them. I hugged the untouchables. Young girls were following me in the office, hugging and kissing me for no reason. They wanted reassurance that they are not disgusting, that they are accepted. We took a lot of photos, and they actually loved being photographed to show off in their social media. The hard part came when I had to convince them to start counseling for their mental well-being, because I knew that behind each smile was a burning heart. For them, the main fear is the label. They knew getting psychological help implies more exclusion for them. There's no doubt that it gets complicated with the existence of their physical disfigurement. A stigma of stigma. The second week started with a group of burn survivors that Ahl Masr Association provided. We gave a talk about emotions, negative thoughts, career, and art. Then one by one, I took each into a counseling room while the rest enjoyed their pizza. By the end of the day, I counseled 20. I stood drained in the middle of the office, but their smiles got me through. They loved everything, especially that they had a chance to be listened to. And I even overheard one asking, "Will she let us come back again?" At that moment, I realized I have made it. I'm breaking their stigma. I gave them the card, told them, "Come back anytime." From then on, Saturdays became our regular meetings. We offered them all sorts of therapy, from expressive writing to art therapy, and of course, all of the services free of charge. Knowing that I couldn't handle the extra work, I sought help from my dear psychology department at the AUC. I knew that graduate students longed for hours, and I longed for people who will come to counsel pro bono. I talked to Dr. Ann Justice, who in turn connected me to Dr. Kate, and off we launched. The psychology department provided students with supervision, reports, education for us to help them. And stigma slowly became unheard. Stigma was breakable. To tell you the truth, the solution is always under your nose. If the problem is money, effort, or people, you will just find it hanging out there. We're born to do what we cannot do. Just take steps and continue. In the center, we all share our thoughts on depression, isolation, anxiety, and we witness the power of peer support and friendship. We've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I hope that it would grow beyond the center walls. For every act of cruelty in this world, there are hundreds of small acts of kindness and connection. Being able to feel safe with other people is probably the single most important aspect of mental health. Safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives, and in a place where there's connection, understanding, and hope comes healing. Thank you.
Thank you, Najib, for those very inspiring words. That means a lot. I'd like now to continue with Farah Shash, who will tell us about her encounter with stigma barriers. Farah?
Okay. So we were actually here in this room a couple of days ago, and we were rehearsing the speeches, and I was actually asked, or I did suggest that we add more stories to our speech, to engage the public and interest them. And I have many of those stories. I've been working with women survivors of sexual and gender-based violence for the past 10 years. But it was really challenging for me trying to think of a story, because when someone tells you, talk about a story where you break barriers, you think automatically a success story. But all I could think about was the stories of all the women that I've seen in the past years who have came to me complaining from rape or sexual harassment or sexual violence or domestic violence. And I realized that that was only just the most recent event or form of violence that they've been subjected to. I recalled a girl who came to me after being raped. She was worried that her wedding is next week, and if her parents knew that she got raped, they'll kill her, totally ignoring the fact that she's only 15 years old and she shouldn't be getting married. So I never really thought that I broke enough barriers. I couldn't stop this 15-year-old from getting married at the age of 15, and I couldn't change right now an environment that actually constantly accepts violations against women's bodies, rights, and choices. So I thought to myself, okay, I also don't think that the support that we provide those women is really about us. It's about them. They fight the fight. We don't fight the fight. They actually use the resilience and strength to be able to overcome what they've been going through. So I thought, okay, so I don't have success stories, and I don't think that I broke enough barriers, and I don't think that I created change and impact. So what's the point? This is what I wanted to do from the beginning. And then I realized this is a question that I keep asking myself over and over, but I realized that the answer would be, we're planting the seeds. While I'm writing this, actually, I remembered that this is something that I was told by Dr. Henry in one of my undergraduate classes. I don't know if you remember that. But it's something that is very important. To give you an example, in 2008, a woman, 27-year-old woman called Noha Rushdi, was harassed by a man on the street. And she actually fought for an hour with people so she can take him to the police and file a police report. After an hour and after fighting with also the police officers to be able to file a police report, she was able to file the first police report against the harasser as an Egyptian woman. In 2010, when HarassMap started, it was trying to work on an issue that a lot of men and a lot of women mostly, but also some men are being subjected to, and it's completely denied and called individual incidents. And at that time, sexual harassment was not called sexual harassment. At that time, someone like Noha was actually blamed for the actions of this woman. At that time, we didn't have reporting mechanisms, and at that time, we didn't have a law to criminalize this act. HarassMap provided an online platform for women and also men to share their stories, to share reports about incidents of sexual harassment, and it used this data to actually go to the public and break stereotypes and make sure that people would know that this is an actual issue that we're facing. Today, almost 10 years later, we have a reporting mechanism. We have a law criminalizing this act. People are not using the online platform as much as they used to before. Actually, that's because instead they're taking pictures of their harassers and sharing it on Facebook with their images and their names. And this is something that we're happy about. This is exactly what we think is the point. We're planting the seeds. Change is not easy. It takes time. It takes years. It wouldn't always be immediately positive. It can backlash, but that's the whole point. We're trying to help give the space for Egyptian women to strengthen their voices, to tell their stories, to practice their rights, and be aware of the rights of these rights and refuse to be blamed for it. Yes, change might not happen right now, but with our unique approach, and I'd like to say as a community psychologist specifically, and the education that we get, and the amount of support that we got from AUC, I think that this will all facilitate planting the seeds for communities to be able to break the barriers themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that story, I think, of courage and change, and that's where we need to go, absolutely. Now, I'd like to turn to Yasmin El-Hadbi.
Good evening. As you've heard, I used to volunteer in Volunteers in Action when I was a student at the AUC. Volunteers in Action, its famous slogan, paint a smile on an orphan's face. The main activity of Volunteers in Action was visiting orphanages every Friday. We had a date with orphans. One day, I met someone in one of the orphanages. She used to be the caregiver of the children we were visiting. And the children at that time, they were playing with dirt and with broken glasses. And I got pissed off. I was very angry, and I looked at her, and I was really angry at that moment. I even can't recall what was her answer. I just remember that she was, at that time, what I thought of, that she was careless. 12 years later, I met the same person at my job, in my office, in Wataniya Society. And this young lady became my superhero. Nahla Nimr, my colleague, and who is today with us, and I'm very proud and honored that she's with us, she taught me how ignorant I was. I realized then, after 3 years, we worked together. She was the volunteer coordinator, and I was the external relations manager. I was her direct supervisor. I never confessed, and I never told Nahla this piece of information, except after 3 years. After 3 years, I understood the real picture. What I saw is a careless person, but actually she was desperate and helpless. I'll share with you 3 realizations we at Wataniya came to and we work for. The first one is ignorance builds barriers. We at Wataniya, since we started in 2008, we realized that when people know, when people get the right information, they understand and they accept each other and they try to think to help each other. And therefore, we started with awareness campaigns, focus groups, visits, with telling people about what's going on with orphans or with institutionalized children or with children without parental care, regardless the term, what's the term. And then we had some campaigns like Know Me, I'm Not Just an Orphan, and Nahla actually was one of the people who are leading this campaign. The second realization was seeing is believing. We realized at Wataniya that we need to work with the orphans youth themselves. We need to help them to accept themselves and to have a positive image towards themselves, because this is what stops them from moving on and growing. And that's where, when we launched Fursa, it's an opportunity in English, it's a youth development program. It aims at raising the self-esteem of orphaned youth. And it aims at helping them to be socially integrated and to be independently successful people. The third realization was it's all about the caregiver. It's all about the love and care we get when we are children. And therefore, Wataniya started to provide, since 2009, learning and development programs for the caregivers working directly with children without parental care raised in institutional homes. We realized that having a qualified caregiver, loving and caring caregiver, will help the children to be more resilient and to build a positive image. Because we cannot reach out everyone and change the perception. It's easier to start from the beginning. And this is the 3 realizations that we reached, and this is how we are working towards breaking barriers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, for that talk that I think helped us very much to understand and also inspired hope, which is what we need. Our final panelist, as you know, is Holid Salah Eldeen.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. I'm very honored to be here today in front of you, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and join us today. And okay, so as a psych student, I have come to research a lot about people who are influential in the field. And in one of his letters to his son, Freud says, "One day in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful." And that quote really resonated with me to this day, and it inspired me to recognize this whenever I remember things in hindsight. Now, when I first entered AUC, I was clueless. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no clue about what major to go to. And that was like in 2014. It wasn't even that long, ago. It's like 4 years ago. But there was this looming perception that psychology is for people who have no other choice, who don't know what to declare, so they just declare it because it's easy. It was branded as a major for losers or girls. It even had a GPA requirement of 2.5 at the time. And when I finally declared, I was over the moon. I was very excited because it was like uncharted territory. I didn't know what it was like. I had no idea what psychology is. I just knew that I was just genuinely interested in it. Now, whenever I introduced myself to other people as a psychology student, everyone would meet me with the question, "Why would you do this to yourself?" And I would stand there like, "What are you talking about?" And I realized that there was this established perception that was embedded somehow in people's minds that I would become crazy as a result of my studies. Yeah. Well, personally, I come from a long line of doctors, and so my parents naturally wanted me to follow suit. Of course, when I was expected to go to med school at Cairo University and carry on the family legacy, well, I didn't. As you can see, I'm right in front of you right here. When I told them that I wanted to go to AUC and study psychology out of all things, you can imagine what the reaction was or what they said. I remember this moment very vividly. But I can tell you from that moment, I legitimately had to almost do a PowerPoint presentation in my living room to convince them why I should study psychology. I was a man on a mission. Hi, Mom and Dad. Well, like I said, I was a man on a mission. And my mission was that I not only wanted to change my parents' view, but I also wanted to change the view of people around me and the community at large. So I asked myself how I could do that. And I ultimately came across the Sociology, Anthropology, and Psychology Association. Wow, that's a mouthful. SAP for short, can I just use SAP? You all know what it means now. And HIA, the Feminist Initiative on campus. Now, SAP, 1 year old at the time, was instrumental in giving me the chance to work on my mission, all the while helping me help people who wanted to major in psychology take the leap. So everyone I met was either hesitant or was looking at me from a distance. They were like, "Is this what psychology is? Or what do you do in this major? I don't know." And I later became president of that association a year later. Now, I would stand in FYE, which is the first year experience, where freshman students would come to ask about their majors available at AUC and stuff like that. And I would be standing there in the sun, just myself, in a booth, and asking them to come and join like it was some kind of cult. And they looked at me weird. They're like, why is this guy so excited? And he's like waving. And but I was genuinely wanted people to join me in this major that I discovered because I realized the importance of psychology not only for Egypt, but for the world. Now, another thing that I worked in was Hiya. So I worked as the first ever mental health and well-being manager, and that really helped me explore gender-based issues and in their intersection with mental health. And that was really enlightening for me. But working in both these things, there were certainly challenges. I was met with much resistance, because when you're trying to do awareness, you have to deal with a lot of like rejection, and I wasn't ready for that, and I really don't deal well with rejection. But I would go up to people on campus while we were walking in assembly hour or something like that, and I would say, okay, so I want to talk to you today about depression, or anxiety, or suicide, or sexual harassment, or bullying, and more topics like that. But these kinds of topics people really like just put to the sideline and they just don't talk about them. Now, during the past couple of years, I encountered a lot of setbacks. Okay. And I questioned whether I was, what I was doing was even worth it. But I'm happy that I persevered in doing this. Now, I'll just close up. I know that it is time, but I just want to say that I'm happy that I didn't give up, because now that I meet a lot of people now after like a few years, and they say, you're the reason that I joined the major and stuff like that, and you really inspired me to convince my parents. But I really know that people might label it as an accomplishment, but however, this is just the beginning. There's a long way to go, and this event for me is the launching pad. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very, very much, Hala. That was very inspirational, and I think I could say on behalf of all of us that we're all really glad that you didn't give up and that you kept going. And in a sense, that's exactly what I would say for all the panelists. It's a continuous struggle, and you've heard their struggles and their determination not to give up and to continue, and that's very much what the department is all about. I think, like me, you've been moved and inspired by these 5 individuals and how they've broken stigma barriers in various ways. And I'm also sure that there are many more stories out there in this crowd, which is a very impressive group, let me say. We'd love to hear from you. And earlier you saw on the screen an email address, and I just, please, I would ask any of you that would like to share your story and send it to that address that was on the screen. It's psych, PSYCH, @aucegypt.edu. And we encourage you to do that, and if it's okay with you, we would love to share those in future departmental newsletters. We're now going to open the floor and for questions. And we have about 20 minutes, we'll give or take. We don't want to go too long. There's a reception, as you know, waiting for us. So I would ask you again to keep your questions very brief and use the microphones that I think are out there and going to be available. Yes, okay, at the back. We are also, I'm going to ask the panelists once again, we're very time conscious here, so I will ask them to keep their answers to, a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the most. It's not enough time to answer the questions, I'm sure, but again, we want to be able to move forward, and so, take your time to review the question a little bit before you start to answer, and again, I would hope that people can formulate their questions in a very succinct way. Are there questions that we have to begin with? There are indeed, so good. I have questions if we need them, but I would much rather hear from the audience.
Question is for all the panelists, actually. If it's been very inspiring listening to stories and the amount of work every organization and all the efforts that we've been hearing about with individuals about stigma. But one thing that I have personally seen is parents or close family members of people with disabilities, mental or physical, themselves are sometimes the people placing the stigma. Not just society and community, they're direct family members. And it's usually the most difficult, having mentioned the fact that it's very important for children to receive love in order to feel safe and actually face community and society, how they're perceived. So how do you work with that? How do you help parents of children, for example, with mental or physical disabilities to actually accept their children and be a source of support rather than a source of pain and rejection? How do you do that?
Actually, it's not really the parents. The parents get their feedback from the environment, from the pediatrician they first meet, who gives a very negative remark of a child born with a disability, for example. So I think the most important thing is to raise awareness in the community and to raise awareness and to share knowledge with the parents. The parents don't know what's the potential of their child. They're being told by some specialists, unfortunately, negative information. So that's how they develop a negative attitude towards their children. If you are a positive person and you show them the potential of the child, and as a person who works with families with children with disabilities, that's what I used to do. Is just tell the parents that the child can, not that the child can't. And then we work on that and I show them that, and then it starts becoming contagious. But it's not that parents don't want their children. It's how they get the feedback from the environment, from the society, that this is something to be ashamed of. So they start acting, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I don't think, I can't blame the parents, personally. I think we need to raise awareness, and the community has to be hand in hand with the families and supportive as well, so they can, and share knowledge. That's very important. I don't know if somebody would you like to.
محي عبد الغني مجلة أكتوبر. امتدادا لرسالة الجامعة الأمريكية المجتمعية، هل فكرت إدارة الجامعة في إنشاء مركز للمعاقين بمختلف نوعياتهم، وذلك لتلقي تدريب مهني وتعليم وسلوكي حتى يندمجوا في المجتمع ويكونوا مواطنين صالحين؟ شكرا.
So for the American University in Cairo, did the organizers or the professors think of establishing any kind of centers for those who are disabled in order to provide capacity buildings for this center and to better serve the community?
I understand the question. The thing is, I'm not sure if it's the role of the university to do a center for persons with disabilities. This university should be helping, in developing skills in persons who are going to work with persons with disabilities. I think that should be the role of the university if we're going to train people who will work in the field. But I don't think the university has a role to create a center for persons with disabilities. We might develop vocational programs for specific disabilities according to needs, that's fine. But I think what we need on the whole is to have persons who are qualified to work with persons with disabilities. That's my take on it anyway.
Let me just add from the side of what we're committed to as a university that the key thing for us is that students that are qualified to study shouldn't be held back by their disability, and that presents a challenge in itself, and it's one that we're very serious about within the limits of our capabilities. But it's a huge thing, and I think that it really fits in to what Hala was just saying, that it's a cultural change. The people with disabilities are no longer going to be hidden away. They're going to be part of society, integrated and recognized for their strengths. And rather than focusing on disability, as I think was on one of the slides, we focus instead on ability, on strength.
I am interested to know your view, because you're probably dealing with governmental institutions. Do you think that the society is heading in the right direction when it comes to accepting people with disabilities people who are burned, people who are raped. Is the society represented in the institutional bodies on the right direction of giving them this right?
Okay.
An honest answer.
Yeah, an honest answer. Yes, sure. Okay, I think there is a change. Maybe, as Farah said, it's taking long time, and that's why maybe people working in development and changing perception and in psychology field, they are the most patient people, okay? But we have not to lose hope, and we have to continue working towards this change. In our case at Wataniya, we started working with the Ministry of Social Solidarity since 2013 towards mandating quality standards for alternative care nationwide. The last guidelines, it wasn't even standards, it was guidelines. It was since 1977. 1977, and then the quality standards, which we worked for 6 years to develop it and customize it and to get input from international organizations and from the government themselves. It took us 6 years, and then 2014, it was accredited. The change we've been witnessed in the social solidarity was great. There was a good leader, Mrs. Ghadawali, and there was a change, but it was taking time because we are talking about history of misery and mess. So yes, we do capacity building for people working in institutional homes who are monitoring the orphanages and working with children and guiding the orphanage managers. And yes, at the beginning, we had this reaction I had when I met Nahla first. Oh, what's this? They will never change. No, there is a change. We get surprised by end of the program that they start to think differently because they didn't have the knowledge, the skills, and sometimes you just need someone, an awakening moment or enlightenment moment. So it's happening, but it's taking time. I think within 5-10 years, we will find representation because I think it's happening right now in the parliament, the representation, but maybe not yet for orphans, but we are looking forward.
I'd like to add something from an interactionist point of view. When you are interacting with the people who first thought that it's a stigma to do counseling, and especially the girls and their parents and everything, we found out that the parents are actually asking for help for themselves. For marriage counseling, and they want different types of counseling. And even the young girls, when they go and, they're not girls only, they're girls and boys. And when they get in the art therapy, for example, and we have newcomers coming to the center and from the burn patients, they would tell them, let's join the art therapy, and the other people, the new ones, would say, no, we don't know how to draw. They say, no, it's not drawing. We're just, the therapist is going to let you draw, and she's going to analyze you, and they start explaining what art therapy is, or what counseling is, or what marriage therapy is. So they are learning, and they are spreading what they are learning in the office to their parents and to their community. And this is from down up, and I think it will grow one day. Yes, there is change.
Thank you for your kind invitation. It's actually a comment, if I may. Well, Khalid, you made the right decision, my dear. When you were talking, it just reminded me of my days. I am Mona Rida, I'm a psychiatrist, medicine, so I took the tough way. But actually, I remember exactly my mom did with me what your parents just, the face, oh, you're gonna work with crazy people, although I am totally against this word now, but yes. And you inspire your friends, that's very good, but when those who are not inspired, just let them look at the disability caused by diseases for the community and the economy, and I bet you in the top 10, you will find 4, if not 5, psychiatric disorders that you can help with. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think nowadays, social media and youth in general are more aware. They read more. They're more inquisitive about what am I feeling, what is this, So I feel like as much as I have a role, I think that the newer generations are fully equipped to break the stigma themselves. I'm just there to, I don't know, just give a slight push, I guess I would say. And I myself am still learning. I'm still a student, and I still have a long way to go. But yeah, I really agree with you, and thank you for your comment.
I think is there a question? Oh, yeah, okay.
I would just like to add that it is a big stigma going to psychiatrists, but it's even more going to counseling and psychotherapy. It's not really acknowledged. What are you going to do? Talk? Why don't you talk to me? Huh? They don't understand what is it that you get out of counseling. The combination of being treated medically with psychotherapy is really underestimated, and it's very underestimated, unfortunately, by a lot of our psychiatrists. I'm glad that Dr. Nasser's not here. Actually, I'm working at the Behman Hospital, and we have started a small initiative, which we've just started through the magazine Identity. I hadn't actually even heard about it until this initiative started, where they have emailed several people through the magazine, and they have given contacts of psychiatrists and psychologists who are offering their services for the first session for free. And if the person decides that this is a good solution for them and this will help them, they can continue for paying for this service. It is a start to raise awareness about counseling and psychotherapy, where to find it, and how to ask for it.
I think we thank you very much for that, and I think the panelists may want to respond to your comment, but I want to frame it in a theme that I think has emerged very much out of our conversation, which is the theme that there are challenges, but that above all there is also hope. And we look into the future, and my question to the panelists, and again, you don't all have to respond, but if any of you have any thoughts on this, as you look into the future, as you think about the future of psychology, where do you see things going? And of course, in the context of that comment, I think particularly in Egypt, in the Egyptian culture, and given some of the issues and barriers that we've been talking about, where do you see the future of psychology? And if you had the opportunity, what words of wisdom would you want to share with the future psychologists, the next generation? Hala, did you want to toss that?
I'll just say what I feel anyway. It's just be true to yourself and don't compromise. That's one thing. Embrace diversity. And it's very important to engrave ethics with our students, because this is a big problem in our society. Yes. And that's my tip.
For me, I think it's expanding, and I think that the university is playing a great role. The psychology department is playing a great role in educating students to be professional, to be more ethical. And again, yes, ethics is the key to everything. And I would advise future generations, or I'd advise future psychologists to start. I'm a marathon runner. I know that in marathons, you have a start line, and you're always enthusiastic to start. But the hardship comes in the middle point, in the middle distance, where you face a wall. And you feel bored, you feel tired, you feel hopeless, and you don't want to continue. Please don't. Just continue. The midpoint is the hardest one. So go on.
Thank you, Najib, for that. Yasmin, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Yes, I studied psychology as a minor, but actually I'm a mass comm major. But I can sense, I'll talk about the psychology department, that when I studied psychology, it was more of theoretical things. But dealing with students from the psychology department nowadays at Wataniya since 2009, and we were working with the psychology classes and the community, part of the community-based learning, I realized that there's a major change. It's more of practical and more customized to the Egyptian needs, and this is really good. The last thing is, it's a dream or a hope, and know that one day the psychology graduates will consider working with children without parental care, the AUC to give scholarship for orphans youth. Such blend will really make a huge difference in this sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin, for that. Farah, did you want to say a few?
Yeah, I think you actually asked several questions. So I think the future of psychology will be very interesting because the field keeps growing and people are becoming more aware of what we can provide as psychologists and the importance of psychotherapy to start with. And then I think all other industries are also interested in psychology as well. We're talking marketing, research, human resources, and many other fields. I would say that for community psychology, maybe things would be more challenging. It looks like they are more challenging. But I'm sure that we'll find ways around the challenges that we're facing now. And my words of wisdom would be make the best out of the opportunity that you get for psychology students, because you have a lot of opportunities, you're being given a lot of support. The professors and Dr. Munaimer, thank you, they believe in you more than you believe in yourself. So that is an opportunity and a chance. Don't waste it. Thank you.
Thank you, Farah. And Holid, you're going last, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but you and your generation are the future of psychology in Egypt, so what do you have to say?
It's a very interesting and complex question. I feel like the future of psychology is very promising. I've seen more and more people over the years enroll and declare, and more importantly, a lot of people are seeking help, and that's something that I'm very proud to be a part of, because I found a lot of students, side note, in my class, I'm the only guy in the class, there's just me. So I stand out, even if I don't want to. But I found people they come to me and they're like, where do we go? I want to talk to someone about something I'm going through. So I found that very nice to be able to guide people to go to the counseling center or the psychology clinic on campus, and it's very gracious of them to offer them their services for free. And I actually took it upon myself to try it, and I'm very pleased with the results, I might say. But I feel like because we're at a point where the field is really gaining recognition, and we're our own department now, for God's sake, and that's huge. Whenever people hear that I'm studying psychology nowadays, they're like, wow, that's really cool. Where do I go to enroll, or where do I go? And you see the School of Continuing Education, you see a lot of people minoring in psychology, like everyone and their mother is minoring in psychology now. And I feel like, yes, there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of hope in terms of psychology students and the field. And I see Egypt becoming more and more open to the field itself, with the plethora of subdivisions that there are, or either it be Dr. Kate's efforts in forensic psychology, for example, which is something that I really, really respect her for, or community psychology, which I didn't even know about until I enrolled here. But there's hope, and I'm very happy to see the growing numbers of psychology students, and I'm really happy to be a part of it at this point in time. Thank you.
Studying psychology is definitely cool. And in that light, I want to invite up the coolest lady in the room today, the chair of our newest department, the chair of the psychology department, Mona Amr, for some final words.
I think many of us want this panel to continue. I think it was very inspiring, and this is a great example of all the people who have been part of this process, that have been part of making this happen. I do have a couple of things for you to do in the audience, so I have some homework for you that will happen today. But before that, I want to thank the different offices that worked with us to make this event happen. This is a long process. So I want to thank the Office of Advancement and Communication, including the Alumni, Special Events, and Media Relations, a fantastic team that has been working nonstop for the past couple of months to really put this together. I also want to thank the Office of the Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences for offering support and overseeing some of the efforts, as well as the Office of the President and the Office of the Provost for their feedback. And also, especially the psychology team that worked together to organize this. There are two people in particular I want to point out. I'm not sure if they're in the room right now. Oh, they're over in the back there. Dr. Jaime Mendoza, who is the... who has led the process, and also Mirvat Buttress over here. We just hired her a couple of months ago, and I'm kind of afraid that she's going to quit after all of this. And if you're an organizer, raise your hand, please, so that we know who you are. Organizer, volunteer, usher, thank you. Yes. Okay. So just a couple of things for you to do before you leave. I know there's a very important question people have been wondering, and I have the answer to you, which is, where is the bathroom? It's right over here. It's right through that hallway. And if you did not take a photograph with the banner outside on the back wall of where Ms. Iman Shahata is standing right there, wave your hand. Right behind her on the other side outside is a banner where you can go take a photograph to say that you were here. And of course, the most important thing is our reception, and the buffet is ready outside, so I'd like to invite everybody, President Richardoni and everybody, to please come and share in the festivities. Thank you.